guys, welcome back to another Ghost and Glam video. So if you are new here, welcome. Every Monday and Friday I sit down and I tell a haunted, ghost, creepy, out of the ordinary, sometimes a true crime story while I get glam at the same time. So if you are into that sort of vibe, then hit that subscribe button down below and join the spooky fam. Okay. So today's story is more on the side of like an unsolved mystery type of story. So we're just gonna go ahead and jump right on into it and stop flapping our gums over here. Today's story takes place in Westfield, New Jersey, and a couple named Derek and Maria just bought their dream house. It was a $1.3 million home at 657 Boulevard Street. Now I'm saying that because it's kind of like important, but either way, it was a 6-bedroom home. It was a really, really nice house. And I guess it was said that if you were able to make it onto like Boulevard Street, then that's how you know that you've made it, I guess, is what people were saying. So this street was like the street to be on. Anyone who's anybody is on this street. Well, Derek was at the house one night, just kind of finishing up some painting in the house, doing some renovations. The couple hadn't officially moved into the house yet. They were just kind of fixing it up a little bit before they decided to fully move into it. Well, the night that Derek was there, he ended up just going to the mail to check it really quick. And because they hadn't officially moved in, there really wasn't anything in there except a couple bills. But then he noticed a white envelope, and on it, it said, "The new owner," is what it was addressed to. And when Derek opened the letter, it said, "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." But the more Derek started to read this letter, like that wasn't the only thing that was said in there. There was more. So the more he started to read it, the more he kind of felt like a weird vibe. So the rest of the letter had said, "How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out." Okay. Well, that's just a little bit terrifying. I wouldn't even know what to do if that happened to me. I'd freak the hell out. The writer kind of knew details about the family already. They knew that they were renovating the house. They knew that there was construction crews outside. They knew that they drove a minivan. Like, it was just weird, right? It's just super freaking weird. Well, they kind of just ignored it for a little bit. They didn't really think anything too serious about it. They were worried, but they weren't like rushing to find out what was going on. Well, one day they were just kind of chit-chatting with the new neighbors, seeing how things were going, just being friendly. And their children were actually just kind of running around in the yard with the neighborhood kids. Well, here's where it gets just a little bit stranger. So they received another letter in the mail after they were visiting with their neighbors. And this time the letter said, "You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me." What the hell? But it doesn't even stop there. It gets even worse. The letters had no return addresses on them or anything like that to go off of. But they just kept getting more letters. They got another one. And this one said, "Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one." Oh my God. And at the end of the letter, the person that was writing these things had said, "Welcome, my friends. Welcome. let the party begin. So right there, it's kind of stating that, hey, this isn't going to stop. Like, I'm going to keep sending you more and more letters over time. Like, just wait. And at the bottom, it was typed, The Watcher. When that letter was received, Derek was actually home alone that time. His wife and his kids weren't with him. So he ended up like running around the house, turning off all of the lights, shutting all of the blinds, like completely freaking out. I mean, I don't blame him. I feel like most of us would freak out at that point. So he goes and he calls the police department, and when they get there, Derek hands them the letter, and even the police are like, what the hell is this? You know, like, who is this? And they asked Derek if he had any like enemies that would want to taunt him or kind of just make his life like a living hell, basically. But Derek didn't really have any. You know, he was like a well-rounded guy. He was a nice guy. So he didn't have any enemies. So the police didn't really know what to do at this point. So all they told him to do was to take a big piece of like construction wood, like a big piece of plywood, and covering like the back porch window, I guess, in case the person that was doing this wanted to throw something at the glass and try and break it and get in there. But other than that, the police really had nothing to go on. They didn't know what to do. It was just kind of hard to follow up on anything at this point, you know? So that same night, Derek actually ends up leaving the house and then going back to their old family house where his wife and his kids were to tell his wife what was going on. So that night, they decide to write a letter to the old owners, the ones that sold them the house, and ask them if they've had like anybody send them weird letters or get weird threats when they were living in the house. Because apparently in one of the letters, the Watcher had said, I asked the woods to bring me young blood, and it looks like they listened. So they're obviously thinking that, okay, maybe the Watcher and then the old owners are like in cahoots, and they know who it is, so they were just trying to get some answers. Well, the next day, the Woods family, the old owners of the house, they had responded to the letter, and they basically said that they didn't really receive anything weird when they were living in the house. They never got any strange letters or any weird threats until the day that they moved out of the house. All they said was that the note was like odd, and they didn't really think anything of it, and they just threw it away. But they did say that the note had stated that the Watcher was also observing their family, but for some reason, I don't know why, they didn't think anything of it. If I got a letter like that in the mail, I would board up my freaking windows. Well, the next day, the Woods family actually went with the Broaddus family to the police station to kind of just get it on record that, hey, something strange is going on here. We just want to make it known. So the detective that they were talking to, Detective Lugo, he informed the family not to mention it to anyone. Don't speak about it, not to the neighbors. Don't tell a single person. Because at this point now, everyone is a suspect. So now the family is kind of like on high alert, which I don't blame them. But Derek actually canceled a work trip that he had to go on, and whenever Maria had to take the kids to the house, or if they wandered too far, she would yell for them. They had to stay in her eyesight at all times. Again, I do not blame them. So 2 weeks after the letters started coming, Maria decided to go back to the house to check on some paint samples and to also check the mail. Well, once again, she noticed that there was a white envelope in the mail with thick black lettering, and guess who it was from? Well, this time the letter was a little weird, even more strange, but the letter said, "Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what was in the walls yet? In time they will." Well, this time, the Watcher had actually addressed the Broaddus family by their name. The Watcher actually misspelled it, but he still addressed them by their name, which how would he know that? Could he have overheard the contractors calling them by their last name or something? I don't know. It's a little weird, right? So over time, the Watcher really started to let the Broaddus family know that he knew quite a bit about this family, especially their kids, In the letter, he actually addressed their kids by birth order and by their nicknames. So, like, how did he know that? The letter had said, "I am pleased to know your names now and the name of the young blood you have brought to me. You certainly say their names often." And what's even creepier is in that letter, he asked the Broaddus family about one specific child. I guess one of their kids used to sit out on the porch and like paint on an easel, but the porch that she would paint on was facing the back of the house. So it was kind of like covered in like foliage and everything, so it was kind of hard to see. But the watcher had stated, "Is she the artist in the family?" That is horrifying. But of course, the letter still continued. 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Okay. You know, if I were that family, I would leave a note in the mailbox and address it to the watcher and be like, "You know what? Quit being a little chicken and come talk to me in person and come get your ass whooped." That's what I would do. Creeping on my kids? I don't think so. I don't have kids, but like still. But the letter, of course, continued. It went on. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the watcher and have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Broaddus family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching. Can this guy, like, get a freaking life already? I mean, honestly, he's freaking creepy. So at this point, Derek and Maria decided to stop bringing their kids to the house, which, I'm sorry, I wouldn't have brought them to the house in the first place. Like, get a freaking babysitter. But anyways, they decided to stop bringing them. It wasn't safe. And they weren't even sure anymore if they even wanted to move into the house. They were just like really going back and forth on it. It's an expensive house. It was $1.3 million. So it's kind of hard to walk away from something like that. Well, several weeks later, another letter arrived. Can you believe it? Another letter. And this one said, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." No thanks. I'm not moving in. Burn it down. Throw it away. The residents of this town stated that, you know, the town was just like a really good place to be. You know, it wasn't filled with crime. Everyone kind of knew each other. It reminded them of like the Andy Griffith show, apparently. The kind of place where you walk down the street and neighbors just greet you just because, you know? So hearing something going on like this kind of started to freak everybody out. There had never been anything weird like this happen in this town before. But one resident actually said that there's a lot of money and a lot of ego in the town. And like I said in the beginning, if you made it on Boulevard Street, then you're like higher class. You're somebody now. You know, that's how the residents of this town looked at that street. So when the Woods family put up the Boulevard house up for sale, they had a ton of offers. I mean, just a bunch of offers. But then the Broaddus family is the one that actually won the bidding war, if you will. And there was a lot of pissed off people about this because they wanted to live in that house. So the Broaddus family kind of suspected that maybe one of the people that didn't get the house is targeting them and threatening them in hopes that they will move out so that they can buy the house. But the Woodses quickly kind of like retracted that. They kind of took that theory away because they said that they had one offer on the house and then that person ended up backing out because they were diagnosed with something medical. And then the other person backed out because they ended up finding a different house. So the Woodses family kind of thought of their own theory, and they suggested, hey, maybe the mentioning of the contractors and your kids would suggest that it's somebody in the community, like somebody around them, one of their neighbors. Well, the more they thought about it, the more they thought, hey, this could be true, because the letters came from a town that was like super, super close by them. Like it was in proximity to their house. And then the first letter was postmarked June 4th, before the sale on the house was even public. So how could anyone even know about that if they weren't in the neighborhood? And it was said that the Woodses didn't even put up a for sale sign. So it has to be somebody that's like inside. You know what I'm saying? Well, the Broaddus family actually got invited to a neighborhood barbecue. So they decided to go and do some like detective work themselves, They didn't tell anyone about the watcher because they were instructed not to. So they decided, hey, this is our perfect opportunity to like look for some clues, really get to know the neighbors and see if somebody slips up. Well, during this barbecue, at one point, Derek was talking to one of the neighbors, and his name was John Schmidt, and he actually lived 2 doors down from the Broaddus family. Well, he had actually brought up a family that lived between the Broaddus family and the Schmidt family, and they were the Langfords. So the Langford family consisted of the mother. She was like 90 years old, and then she had several adult children that lived with her, and they were in their 60s. The neighbor had mentioned that the family was a bit odd, but that they were, pretty much harmless. He did describe one of the sons, though, as looking like Boo Radley, but he just had like a really long beard and was just kind of like straggly, just living his best life. So Derek instantly thought, that's it, the case is solved. They're the only family in between us that could even see the back of the house where their daughter was painting on the easel. So he was like, the case is solved. It has to be them. There's no other way anyone could see my daughter from the street. It has to be this family. Like, he was really set on it. But not only that, the family had lived there since the 60s. They were the only family that was still living in that neighborhood. And that is when the watcher had said that his father had been like patrolling the house, right? It was in the 60s. So Derek decides to tell Detective Lugo about the family. And Detective Lugo strangely already spoke to the man that looked like Boo Radley. His name was Michael, by the way. After the first letter arrived, I guess he already had brought him in for questioning on it. And he basically just said that he didn't know anything about it. He had no part of it. And being that there was no hard evidence with this situation, it was really hard for the police to do anything. So they basically told him that there wasn't much that they can do. And this pissed Derek off, like real bad, which I'm sure it would piss anybody off. The police told him that probably nothing is going to happen. And Derek was like, this is somebody that has threatened my kids. I can't count on probably. Probably isn't good enough. And then Derek just kind of lost it, and it told the cops, look, if you don't take care of this situation, then there's going to be a whole nother situation that you need to take care of. He was real pissed, which I do not blame him at all. Well, after getting no help from the police department, Derek decided, you know what, I'm going to take matters into my own hands, and I'm going to handle this myself. Well, he kind of became obsessed with the whole situation. He actually ended up setting up a bunch of security cameras all over the house. He spent nights crouched in the dark, just waiting to see if he could see someone walking up to the house or peeking in the windows, whatever he could do. The Broaddus family would actually end up turning to experts at this point. They hired a private investigator to look deeper into the Langford family, but he found nothing. He also staked out the entire neighborhood day and night, still didn't find anything. Derek hired FBI agents that he kind of knew, like from high school, they were kind of high school buds, but he hired them to do like a threat assessment and again, just stake out the neighborhood, see what they could find. Well, one of the detectives that Derek hired was examining the letters really, really closely, and he kind of noticed some ticks in the letter, which would suggest that it was written by like an older person. There was a lack of profanity in the letters, meaning that even though this person's angry, they're not like young people are when they're angry, you know, it's just like, oh, screw you and you and, you know, it's not like that. The FBI agent also pointed out that's kind of like obvious, is that there's a certain anger directed towards wealthy people. The FBI agent thought that the watcher was just really upset that somebody new was moving in that had money and was changing the house. Well, even though that the detectives and everything, they didn't find anything on the Langford family, they still weren't giving up that it could possibly be them. So one detective actually sent them a letter stating that they're actually going to tear the house down, hoping that they would get some sort of response that would kind of be angry, so that way they could kind of try and pin it on them, but they got nothing. Like, the Langfords didn't care. So then they really had to start thinking about other suspects. You know, who else is living in this neighborhood? Well, while they were investigating, they actually found that 2 sex offenders were living in the neighborhood, and they were child sex offenders. But nothing ever came up of that. And then the family's house painter that was working on the renovations of the house noticed that the couple that lived behind the Broaddus house had 2 lawn chairs that were facing the back of their house. And they were like strangely close to the property. And the painter had said that one day he was in one of the rooms painting and he looked out the window and he just saw this old man sitting in one of the chairs. He wasn't facing his house. He was facing the Broaddus' house. So what was he doing, you know? He could just be one of those nosy neighbors, you know? Like, when you move into a new place and you get those neighbors that just sit outside and watch you move in, it's so freaking weird. Like, quit looking at my stuff. But by 2014, the investigation on the watcher just kind of was at a standstill. They really had nothing to go on from here. So at this point, the Broaddus family was still debating on whether or not they should move into the house or not. But at this point, Derek alarmed the house with a whole big extravagant alarm system. He even put out an ad on Craigslist for like trained German Shepherd dogs and listed that all you have to do is sit in the backyard with your dog at night and just watch. So he was kind of just becoming like a little bit obsessed with this. Well, then they got another letter in the mail from the watcher. And this one said, 657 Boulevard is turning on me. It is coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell did you cast on it? It used to be my friend and now it is my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Let the young blood play again like I once did. Let the young blood sleep in 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone. But the Broaddus family actually ended up putting the house on the market just 6 months after they got the first letter. They were asking a little bit more than what they bought it for because they were doing renovations on it, you know. It was worth a little bit more. But when they disclosed what was going on with the watcher to potential buyers, all of them fell through. None of them wanted to buy it after that. So then later in 2015, the Broaddus family actually filed a lawsuit against the Woods family, the people that owned the house before them, for not disclosing that they too got a letter from the watcher when they were living there. But the judge threw out the case because he said that it could change what sellers would have to disclose when trying to sell a house. Well, then rumors started to fly around the community, and some people were saying that maybe the Broaddus family was sending these letters to themselves in order to get out of a house that they couldn't afford. One resident said, how can a couple that has a $300,000 house in Scotch Plains and a $175,000 mortgage 10 years ago have a $1.3 million mortgage? So they were trying to figure out, like, how could they even afford this anyway? So, I mean, that kind of makes sense on as to why they would want to sell it or like try and get out of it. But I don't know. There was really no evidence on that. It's just kind of a theory. In 2016, the Broaddus family made like their one last final hope for the house, I guess. So they went to the city to see if they could somehow tear down the house and put in 2 separate houses and redevelop the property. Well, it was soon denied, like that wasn't going to happen at all. And shortly after that, some of the neighbors had reported getting threatening letters from the Watcher. Some of them stating like, you know, if you don't let this happen, this is going to happen. Just threatening letters. Well, it turns out that the person that was writing those letters to the neighbors was Derek himself. Okay. I think with that, he was just trying to get people to be like, hey, you know, what if this started happening to you? Would you want to be stuck in this freaking house? Either way, it's not good what he did. It does not make him look good at all, but he did it. So eventually, after years of being on the market, the house finally sold in 2019. So just last year. Like, this story's fairly recent. The Broaddus family actually ended up taking a $440,000 loss on the home, but at least now, like, their family's safe and they don't have to worry about it anymore. And still to this day, Derek and the Broaddus family still deny having anything to do with the letters. That the only letters that were ever sent by them were the ones after they were rejected to redevelop the property. So I look scary. So what's strange about this case and why it's just so like weird and unsolved is because there's literally no evidence of anything. They never saw anybody walking up to the mailbox. There's no fingerprints. There's no DNA on anything. So that's why this case is so unsolved and no one has any clue on what's going on. But there are some theories. So the first theory is that obviously the Broaddus family are the ones that are the Watcher. So some people think that they were creating this whole big scheme in order to get movie rights and get this big paycheck, which would actually kind of make a little bit of sense because it's an expensive house. They already had 2 more expensive houses. So how could they afford all of that at one time? And also, residents were saying, you know, why would they continue to renovate the house and put all of this hard work and money into it if they weren't even planning on living in it? Because they never lived in the house. They would just go there and renovate it, and then they ended up selling it 6 months later. So that's one theory, and that one actually kind of makes a lot of sense because Netflix actually bought the rights to their story in 2019. So this family is probably just like set on money, like they're fine. The other theory is that it was definitely somebody in the neighborhood and that the whole neighborhood was in on it. That's why nobody ever saw anybody put anything in the mailbox. There was never any sighting of anyone on their property. So how can one neighborhood not see a single person walk up to the mailbox and put a letter in? This new family comes in and they're supposedly pretty wealthy. I guess Derek got like a nice big promotion at work. So they were able to afford this house, but then they start remodeling it and renovating it and changing like the whole first plans of the house. And if it's an older community, they may not like that. They may not want change. So that one also kind of makes sense too. This story is just a little bit weird to me. If I were getting threatening letters like that, one, I would put another one in the mailbox and tell that person, you have something to say, you come to my door and we'll talk about it. Also, if somebody's like threatening to harm you, don't move into the house, which I mean they didn't, but just up and leave it. Don't spend your time renovating it. Like that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? Just up and sell it the way it is. But anyways, that is the story of the Watcher. Let me know what you guys think down below. What are your ideas on this story? This one's pretty interesting and really creepy. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions, so comment down below. That is all I have for you guys today. So don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel and join the spooky fam. Follow me on my socials. Those will be linked down below. All of the products that I used today will always be in the description box, so you can find everything there. And I have nothing else to say except I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!